Hi, good morning, all. How are we doing today?
Hi, good morning.
Morning, all
Good
is well.
morning.
Good, good. I'm happy that so many of you can join us. I know we had a very the storm wasn't so bad, but some of us may have had damage as well as some of us may have been without electricity. And so thank you. Today is a holiday. I know we want to relax and unwind and prepare for tomorrow, but thank you for being so diligent and joining the class so we can stay current and continue on our scheduled plan. So Thank you. I'll try to make it as quick as possible so you can get on to enjoying your holiday. And I'm also recording, and this will be placed up on YouTube by tomorrow latest. So anybody who would not have been able to make it can just listen to the recording and then I guess contact me if you have any questions or concerns.
Okay,
Okay?
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, good, good. Okay, so I see most of you sent in your homework. Were there any issues with the homework?
No,
No, none
No,
for me.
pretty
no.
straightforward.
Straightforward and understandable. Okay,
Right.
good. And so that was the first homework. That was the mandatory homework. And now for the second piece, you're able to select one of the other essays. Now, some person sent me two pieces, so I'm wondering if anybody was confused as to what was due. Did everybody know there was just you would just select one piece? You could have sent both, but if it was not a requirement, just the piece on terrorist financing was due on Friday. Was that clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
okay,
fine.
okay. So for the persons who would have sent questions one and two, that's fine. That's your two pieces that would in total for the entire class. So that's fine. So you finish right up front. So very good. Thank you for that. Okay, so I encourage everybody to read the newspaper. Did anybody have the opportunity to do it this week, or was that this week very trying and we weren't able to get around to the newspaper?
I don't
I
know. Pretty.
read a few things in last week's paper.
Okay, you care to share so you can get your 10 points? What did you read in last week's paper?
Oh, well, I guess as it relates to the course, I saw a piece by Mr. Derek Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's employed by a law firm as a compliance officer, and he was just speaking about the importance of having both hard skills and soft skills in the area of compliance. So, aside from needing to have, uh, I guess, the problem solving skills and the analytical skills, you also have to be someone who is emotionally intelligent, someone who is able to present. So, he talks about the importance of these, what do you call them? I guess community organizations. So, you have the Kiwanis, the Rotary, Toastmasters, and also being able to be a team member as well. He just spoke on those areas as being critically important. Yeah, that was the gist of his piece that he wrote that I thought was applicable to the course. Aside from that, I saw something about BPL saying that out of the persons who are in arrears, there's only some 90%. I mean, 90% of those persons still haven't they haven't come forward to either settle their account or to uh, I guess come up arrange a payment plan with BPL. So there's some 12,000 persons who are running the risk of having their electricity turned off in the next, I guess, soon. That was something else that I saw. And then from the insurance side, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he was saying that insurance companies can't continue to increase premiums because at the end of the day, you're just gonna have persons who aren't able to pay anything, and with us being in a region that's prone to hurricanes and yeah, basically hurricanes, it's gonna be difficult for persons to get coverage for things like that, or catastrophic events if we continue to increase insurance premiums. So he said that that's an area that we need to look at as well. Because yeah, it's going to be difficult for persons to keep up with their insurance if every time that there's a catastrophic event, we continue to just increase the premiums.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Simone. Excellent, excellent pieces. Very relevant, all three of them. And so, in terms of soft skills, when you go, I said this is a three-test course. This is the beginning introduction, then you go on to intermediate, and then you go on to ICA. And in the governance, risk, and compliance section of the ICA program, there's at least 3 or 4 chapters about interpersonal skills, how to deal with persons, ensuring that you have the right technical but also the right soft skills. So very relevant. When I first started in compliance, there were a lot of persons not doing what they were supposed to do, and some persons who didn't have proper training. And so once you ensure that your staff members are properly trained, it makes your life a little bit easier. Half of my day from 9 to 12, I had to answer questions, and I had to answer questions for the entire institution. And luckily, we only had about 40 persons. But from 9 to 12 persons, we had a generic box where persons would send emails, and I'm talking about from credit, from finance, from HR, all who wanted to know, the correct way to carry out their job functions or what policy and procedure they should refer to. And so a lot of times, I don't have a credit background, and persons would come, asking me questions related to credit. And so I would also always say, come to me after you would have read your policy and procedure, because I can't take the time to sit down and read it for you. So come to me with some information, and then I will be able to assist you. Then I also had to do research. And so a lot of times, as the compliance department, we felt like, well, this really isn't our job. And should we even be entertaining these questions every day? But again, the institution, they had come out of a very bad audit. And so training, there was a need for training. And so, like I said, for half a day, for almost 2 years, it took for, the compliance department to retrain everybody, make sure everybody went out to relevant courses. Like I said, that's where it showed that interpersonal skill, because we had to ensure that we worked with everybody. Everybody felt like we had an open door policy, and everybody felt like we were approachable. And so a lot of persons may think now today, oh, that's the CEO's job or senior management's job, but no, it fell on compliance. And so in your training, like I said, on the governance, risk, and compliance side, you would see where there's a lot of information on the interpersonal skills that you should attain or have, as well as the technical skills. Okay, so ensure that you are personable, very approachable, and you are diplomatic in all your responses. Okay, so very good. And again, too, I saw that writing up on the insurance company, and of course, we know that every time there's a hurricane or a natural disaster of some sort, the rates they skyrocket. And I thought it was very relevant, because are we truly going to be able to afford insurances any longer? Persons are going to just be turned away because the premiums are just really, really too high. And so a lot of persons, if they don't cap the insurance, persons are going to decide that, hey, this is just too expensive. A lot of persons now even have to make that decision concerning health insurance. Once they retire, they see that their premiums skyrocket, and persons are paying $1,200, $1,100 a month just for health. And so a lot of people just say, I cannot afford it, it makes no sense, and they discontinue it. So they're gonna have to look for a new way to cap some of these premiums. Like you said, particularly where we have a hurricane season every year, and every year we have at least one hurricane. And so they can't think that every single time they have to pay out, they can increase the premiums. Okay, so very good. And then again with BPL, a lot of people aren't working. I mean, I think it's the person's responsibility to go in and make an arrangement, but a lot of persons are not working. So again, these are very difficult times, even for the people that are working, because you have to spend so much money on food. Once there's a lockdown, persons are filling up with gas, and the hurricane. And so I guess we're gonna have to find a unique way, think outside the box, try to find a better way to help the people, because the masses are affected. It's not like a minority or a small group of persons that are affected by this pandemic. The world has been affected. So yeah, the government is going to have to find a way to help, because if you turn off, like my electricity for instance goes with my water, so if
My
my
too.
electricity was disconnected, my water will be disconnected, and so therefore that poses a health problem,
For
you
sure.
know. And so you may find that the health system then is what should I say, overpowered, you know.
Compromise.
There may be a net effect. So
Mhm.
we're gonna have to think outside the box and try and figure out a way to help persons during this pandemic, right? Sorry, somebody else was saying something.
No, I was saying the health system is compromised in a case like that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
does it make sense to disconnect the electricity to further compromise the health system?
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So
Yeah.
that's what, and as compliance officers, many times we are faced with these types of situations. We have to find solutions. There
That's
are
right.
going to be sometimes there's not going to be a policy or a procedure or a friend that we can refer to. So you think outside the box. You have to be innovative, and you actually have to find a solution. So this is why I say network. Get like-minded people in your circle. If you hang out with a certain group on the weekends, one weekend, instead of hanging out and partying, let's try and invest together. Let's what should I say, brainstorm, try and think of a creative way to get a seat at the table, so we are the ones, the future leaders that are making the right decisions. Let's be innovative. Let's keep upgrading ourselves, and make a better country for both ourselves and our children to live in. So again, or take some time and just make some suggestions to the government. I see now that they're using the Facebook platform. They ask, there are lots of surveys out there, and there are a lot of, suggestions and feedback that they are, both taking and giving. So please take some time to, help, you know, um, because a lot of times we have the same players who've been making the same decisions for the last 40 years, and they need some fresh minds and some, fresh ideas. So feel free to, assist, because nobody in our, I guess, has ever experienced this. The last time this was in what, 1900s, early 1920. And so that's like more than 80 years ago. So we need, as much assistance as possible. Okay, so excellent, Simone. Definitely on the right track, keeping abreast of what's going on in your country. And hopefully, in your spare time, you will be able to brainstorm and come up with some ideas and perhaps provide some feedback. So, very good. Excellent. Anybody else?
Well, I came across two articles in the newspaper last week. And the first one concerned money laundering to some extent. There were four American men who were arrested in the magistrate court for not failing to declare over $30,000 that they were carrying. All of them held work permits in the Bahamas. They, are, they were all released on $5,000 bail, and the matter was adjourned to December for trial. So basically, they did not comply with the regulations in place, the relative statutory legislation that they must declare anything in excess of $10,000.
Okay, and does anybody know from today's lecture we're dealing with chapter 3, which law that falls under?
Yes.
Maybe FTRA, maybe, I guess.
No, not the
The
FTRA.
What about FRU?
Currency Declaration Act.
Yes, excellent,
Okay.
excellent. Delisa, very, very good article you would have read. And surprisingly, that you said $30,000, because my example that I was going to use today also is about $30,000. And with this Travelers Currency Declaration Act, what happened in the past was that this was a US law. And remember, the FATF came in and said that 22 of our laws were deficient from the 40 recommendations they would have made. Well,
Right.
this was one of the laws that had a deficiency because what had happened was a doctor traveled from Nassau to Jamaica and she had $220,000 in cash. Anybody recall that a few years back when a very prominent doctor was arrested at the airport and they found $220,000 in cash and she was on her way to Jamaica?
I don't remember.
No, no.
Anybody recall that story? Okay, so yeah, she was on her way to Jamaica. She had $220,000 in cash. And so they immediately pulled her suitcase and they arrested her. And so her husband used to be a politician many years ago, or he ran for a constituency. I don't think he was successful. So they called the prime minister, and the prime minister said to let her go immediately. And so everybody, of course, they said it was political because of who she was. They slapped her on her wrist and they let her go. But that was not the case. The law had a loophole in it at that time. Our laws did not say when you leave the Bahamas, you had to declare 10,000 or more. US law said that. So if you were going to the USA, you had to declare the 10,000 or more. She was going to Jamaica, and I don't know if any of you have ever gone to Canada, Jamaica, or Cuba. You don't go through the U.S. Was a separate part in the domestic section at the airport where you could go directly to Jamaica or directly to Cuba. We're familiar with that? Or,
Yes,
right,
we are.
right. And so she was in that part of the airport, and so therefore they had no right to lock her up because she was not going to the U.S. And so, of course, when the FATF came in and said that this wasn't one of the recommendations, but this was one of the loopholes that they saw in the law. The Bahamas updated the Travelers Currency Declaration Act and they made an amendment to it, and which now states that everybody traveling from the Bahamas, no matter where you're going to US, Canada, Cuba, you have to now declare. So at the time she was arrested, it wasn't law, but now it is law. And so back to the $30,000, just last year when there was what is the spring break? There were four guys at the Bahama. They gambled. They were very lucky. They won $30,000 at the Bahama. Called their parents out of Canada and said, what should we do? And so the father told the son to just split up the money between each person and come go through customs. And so that's exactly what they did. Collectively, you can't even travel as a group. If you're traveling with a group or a person like the church or a other civic group, you have to find out exactly what amount of money persons carry, and if it's more than $10,000, you need to declare or you can be arrested and your money can be confiscated. And so this was a group of four. They went through, had the $30,000 confiscated. They were arrested, and when they went before the court, the 30,000 was confiscated. Plus, they were charged $1,500 for not declaring. Okay, so please be careful. If when we travel now, it's not only to the U.S., but once you leave the Bahamas, it's now in law that we must declare over the $10,000. Okay, so in the last year or so, since they would have updated this law, there have been many cases where persons have had their money confiscated, and they were fined as well. So make sure that that's none of us being hauled before the courts. Okay, and so thank you, Delisa, for that. There was something else you wanted to share.
Yes, and
Go
there was
ahead.
an article on the compliance side from the Attorney General. There was a public outcry because of the.
We're having a breakup. I can't hear you clearly.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Can you hear me any better now?
It sounds muzzled, but go ahead.
Okay. So the Attorney General, Carl Backel, he did an excerpt last week where, as he was speaking about the public outcry, whereas we had the position we stopped letting the US citizens come into the Bahamas. And then it seems as if they changed their stance to allow the citizens to now come in. And so we spoke to the Chicago Convention, and he indicated that these were certain regulations that we had signed up for with this treaty. And so it isn't as if the government had went back on their initial position, but because we were signed with this treaty, we had to remain in compliance with this treaty to not discriminate against the Americans entering into the country on the basis of COVID-19. He did find a loophole that spoke about public emergency, how we can, I guess, stop the Americans from coming in on the basis of public emergency. But he went further to say that the article superseded our position. So I thought that that was interesting from a compliance standpoint, that we have to remain in good standing with these regulations and the different treaties that we're signed up with.
Okay, very good. And again, very relevant to the lecture that we're going to have today, because remember, we talked about how law is established. And a lot of people, like you said, there's a lot of noise in the market, and people really don't know the facts. So there's a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of gossip and a lot of rumors. And especially if we don't support the political party, we add our little 5 cents on it to say that they're incompetent. And so here it is, you know, this is the first time. It is a very trying time. They have to make a lot of decisions, and they're changing them swiftly. It's hard to keep up, but you know, I think we should bear with them. I don't think any other government would have done a better job. So I am just, you know, trying to support them as much as possible. But again, they would have made a decision that would have been in the best interest of the Bahamian people. But however, like you said, we are part of this convention. And so this is what I want to talk to you about in terms of chapter 3 again, the AML framework, 7 or 8 laws that make up the AML framework. And remember, I told you all last class how law is established. There are these international bodies, and I would have showed you the FATF 40 recommendations, which is the most common. And I have it up on, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so again, the FAT 40 recommendations would have been put made into international standard. And from these FATF regulations, then we would have created our law. And this is one of the laws that came out of the 40 recommendations, which is the Financial Transactions Reporting Act. And then there is POCA, which is the Proceeds of Crime Act. So from those recommendations, then into law. And then remember, I told you, depending on who your regulator is, there is central bank guidelines that also write these laws, put them into simpler form, and so you can easily understand it, or you can easily interpret it. And so outside of the 40 recommendations, there is also the Vienna Convention, the Palmero Convention. Then there is the U.S. Patriot Act. And persons may ask, and if you go on to intermediate, you would find out exactly why a U.S. law would be applicable to us. And it's applicable to us is because we deal with a lot of correspondent banks. And what they have done is tied the law to correspondent banking. And so once you would have used the US dollar, the US dollar is extraterritorial. And so once you use US dollar, the US Patriot Act then becomes applicable to you. And then there's also the Wolfsburg principles. So outside of the 40 recommendations, there are various committees, there are various standards. It's the Basel Committee. And what they do is they say, we recommend that you put this into law. And so each country would then establish their law. And like I said, we established the FTRA, the Anti-Terrorism Act, the Financial Transaction Reporting Act, the Traveler's Currency Declaration Act, and the Proceeds of Crime Act, which is a combination of all the standards that are out there, the 40 recommendations, the Wolfsburg principles, what the UN says, the US Patriot Act, and so on. And so a combination of these recommendations we put into law. And like I said earlier, in 2000 we put in the shell because regulation is very expensive. You can't only just put laws into place, you have to ensure that they are enforced. So you have to hire an enforcement. The enforcement in the financial industry is the compliance department. And so then the compliance department has to ensure that persons are trained, they are aware of the laws, and that institutions remain compliant. And so if this does not happen, like it happened with us, where we only put in the shell, the FATF comes back in and says, you're not compliant with AML standards. So they did a mutual evaluation, and from their mutual evaluation, they found that 22 of our laws were deficient. And so if we said, okay, but it's only a recommendation, you didn't say that we had to put it into place. What happens if we decide that no, we're not going to put this law into place or this recommendation into place? What do? They blacklist us, right? And they say we're non-compliant with international standards. So even though they call it a recommendation, they, what you call it, passive aggressively tell us that if you don't put these laws into place, if you don't update, then you will be blacklisted. Okay, and of course we don't want to be blacklisted. We don't want to come across as we don't comply with international standard. And so again, we would have put all the recommendations once they came and they did the mutual evaluation in 2017, which I shared that document with you in an email. They said exactly where we were deficient, and then we went in 2018 and updated all of our anti-money laundering laws. Okay, and so on page, I hope it's the same page, but the beginning of chapter 3, it talks about the Anti-Terrorism Act. It talks about the Financial Transaction Reporting Act. It talks about POCA and the Traveler's Currency Declaration Act, and then the Proceeds of Crime. So let me try and share my screen again and show you exactly POCA. So the objectives of POCA are to consolidate and strengthen provisions relating to preventative and investigative measures against money laundering, terrorism financing, terrorism, corruption, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, human trafficking, and related offenses, the recovery of the proceeds and instrumentalities of crime, including providing for civil forfeiture of the proceeds of criminal conduct and illicit cash, and to introduce powers relating to unexplained wealth, investigative orders, the confiscated assets fund, and a confiscated assets committee. Okay, so that's the objectives of just one. This is the Proceeds of Crime Act. And if you look at each of these laws, um, they are about, this one is 125 pages. So again, and it's not in layman's terms. So this is why lawyers stay in business, because we need them to not only represent us in court, but be able to interpret some of the laws. Okay, and so a very popular part in which you're always going to be tested off. This is a very popular multiple choice question on the exam, is the tipping off and the failure to disclose. So if we just look through the table of contents, we see that, can you see the screen?
No, where are you?
No, ma'am.
No.
Okay, let me go back to sharing the screen. Share. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so through the again, like I said, this is 125 pages, and again, not in layman's terms. And so what you always do is when you're doing your research, you go to the table of contents and you look for the particular topic you're looking for. So again, a very popular multiple choice question on the final exam is the penalty for failing to disclose and the penalty for tipping off. So are we aware what failing to disclose is? Anybody familiar with failing to disclose?
Is it failing, like if you, let's say for example, know of a situation and you don't present it to, or say like Like, let's say, for example, let me see how I can put it. If I know someone is doing a money laundering act, just a matter of fact of me knowing what they're doing, and I'm not given the information or filling out a unusual transaction report or anything.
Right, correct. So that's correct. And so with this particular law, each financial institution and every employee in those financial institutions commit to disclosing any act of money laundering or terrorist financing. And so why this had to be, it was in the previous law, but it was updated in 218 because there were quite a number of instances where we had the persons on the front lines, let's say tellers, who would have been privy to the information. I told the story of our car wash guy coming in with the $10,000 and we depositing it to his account and not saying anything. I would have failed to disclose. And so therefore we had many tellers come in, or they complete the transactions, but they're afraid and they feel like this is below my pay grade. What should happen is the MLRO in the branch should create a suspicious transaction form or an unusual transaction form that the tellers or the customer service reps or the frontline persons fill out, and then they pass it on to compliance. The MLRO will then investigate it to find out if this is the case of money laundering or terrorist financing, or if it's just a case where this person would have opened the account, let's say in their teenage years, and now they are working, and they weren't previously working, or they would have gotten a promotion, and this is why their transactional activity would have changed, and perhaps somebody didn't do an update. But if that's not the case, um, we are required, and everybody, compliance is everybody's business, and everybody in the institution can be charged with failing to disclose. Like I said in the past, we had some tellers who said, that ain't my business. I'm not going to court. I'm not filling out a suspicious transaction report. And there was one particular case where um, a compliance officer had found out that a suspicious transaction was occurring just from in the background. There are lots of triggers and lots of systems that compliance works with to be able to determine if these persons are outside of their profile. And the compliance officer approached the teller, and the teller said that, well, I'm afraid because nothing in this bank is confidential and I'm not disclosing, I don't want my name called. Then she went to the managing director, who said, I agree, nothing in this, and this is the managing director, right? Said, I agree, nothing in this bank is confidential. And so I understand why the teller feels that way and does not want to fill out this form. And so again, from the feedback from compliance, when they updated the law, they wanted to ensure that everybody knows that no matter what position you are in the financial services sector, you are required to disclose. So there's no, I don't feel like it, or I am afraid, or this is below my pay grade. So of course, the money laundering reporting officer does not say who you are, or they don't call your name. Depending on how the case goes, you may be summoned to court. But more than most, what I've seen over the years is that the MLRO goes to court and represents the bank, not an individual, either CEO or the MLRO. But they had to beef up, MLROs across the world had asked, the Attorney General, and giving feedback to ensure that persons, before they sign up for these jobs, that they are aware of what their responsibility is. And in onboarding a new employee, you would see now that most companies give you a form with listed laws on it that includes failure to disclose and tipping off and what the penalties are. And they ask you to sign that to ensure that you are aware of what your responsibilities are. So gone are the days when you can say, it's not my business, I'm just a teller or what have you, because it caused a very big problem in the field. So they put it in, and it's being now, again, these laws are not only beef up with all the information, all the required parts, they're being enforced. Okay, so don't be surprised if there's an on-site visit from your regulator, and the regulator asks you immediately, what is failure to disclose? Do you know the penalty, which what is tipping off. And are we all familiar with what tipping off is?
More or less, it's when you alert, I guess, someone that they are being watched, before they're caught.
Right, exactly. And just like my scenario with my car wash guy, he opened that account. His profile said I will deposit $50 a month. Then he bought 10,000. So rather than I said, oh my Lord, listen, don't put that money in this bank, or we'll have to freeze it and write up at a suspicious transaction report. I would have been tipping him off. So that also was against the law, because we are a very everybody's your friend, your cousin, or you know somebody. We have a lot of cousins here, and we are closely knitted. And so you can't tip your cousin off, or you can't say, don't put this money in the bank, because we can put it on hold and we can call the police for you. When again, one of your responsibilities is when you sign up for a job in the financial services sector, you then agree to not tipping off, and you agree to help the police bring these criminals to justice. Okay, so we're in the table of contents. We see failing to disclose, we see tipping off, and you want to ensure that when you do your research and you pull up the laws, you check the date. Ensure that you pull up 2018, because somebody had completed an essay and they listed tipping off and they listed failure to disclose, but they used the 2000 law. So even with the FATF recommendations, you want to ensure to check the date, because this has been updated a few times. So it started originally in 2012, but you want to ensure the date says updated June 2019, and you're using the most current version. Okay, so we see that we're in the table of contents, and we want to go and find out if we do have a bad day and we decide that we're not going to disclose, or we do go and tip off, what exactly is the penalty. And that's the F. Let me go back up. I may be on the wrong one. Sorry, I'm not as technically savvy, so you have to work with me. I'm trying to get the correct version up. Okay, this is poker. So is this clear so far, or are we good? Tanya?
Hi, yes, okay, I can see it
Hi,
now.
you good?
Yes.
You're good? Okay, good. And this is clear so far?
Yes.
You understand me? I'm not just rambling. Okay,
No,
good.
you're not.
Okay, good. So we're in poker. We're in 2018, and we see in the table of contents, it says part 3 under identified risks, failure to disclose. It was a nominated officer who we call the bank employees, on tipping off. So we go down to, I guess, pages 17 and 18, and then we want to look at the penalty. The penalty is a right under. Okay. And then you want to be careful with the penalty is, because the penalty is first, it says from 9 to 11, and then it goes on to say penalties from 12 to 14. And so you want to ensure that you use the right one, because failure to disclose is 13 and tipping off is 14. And so you don't want to go and look at the first penalty. We see that the penalty says 9 to 11, right? So 9 is a completely different subject, right? You see that, right? This jumps. Okay, but
Yeah.
you see 11 is acquisition. So you want to ensure that you use the right, penalty, because a lot of people get confused. And of course, it's going to be a multiple choice question. So it's a bit tricky. So you want to ensure that you use the right penalty, as well as you use you look at the numbers on the side. So Tanya, I think you need to get your 10 points for participation. So you want to read fail to disclose by a nominated officer for us?
Sure, no problem. Okay. Okay, failure to number 13, failure to this. You want me just to read all of just 13?
Yes.
Okay, so 13, failure to disclose by nominated officer. officers. Okay, number one, a nominated officer commits an offense if A, the nominated officer knows or suspects or has reasonable grounds for knowing or suspecting that another person is engaged in money laundering or an identified risk activity. And B, any information or other matter on which the knowledge or suspicion of the nominated officer is based or which gives reasonable grounds for such knowledge or suspicion came to him in consequence of a disclosure made under section 19(1)(a), and C, he does not make the required disclosure as soon as is practicable after the information or other matter comes to him. Number two, for the purposes of this section, a required disclosure is a disclosure of the information or other matter, A, to a focal point officer, B, in the form and manner, if any, prescribed for by the Financial Intelligence Unit. 3, a person does not commit an offense under this section if he has a reasonable excuse for not disclosing the information or other matter.
And again, a reasonable information, I guess, supposed to be threats of death or what have you, but you would need to also should be reporting that. Okay, go on with the tipping off.
Okay, tipping off. A person commits an offense if A, he knows or suspects that 1, any disclosure under this part has been made, or 2, an action has been taken by the FIU in relation to anything under this part, and B, he makes a disclosure to another person which is likely to prejudice any investigation which might be conducted following the disclosure referred to in paragraphs A1 or A2.
Okay, and what are our penalties?
Okay, just go down a bit. You want me to read the penalty? Okay.
Yeah.
Penalty.
So,
oh, just one more. Just go one more. Yeah.
yeah,
Down
no, because again, remember the first penalty is for 9 to 11, clauses 9 to 11. Our clause was 13 and 14, right? And so here it is, part 2. So don't get confused because all of this is going to be on the exam. So ensure you know the penalty. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I'm lost. I didn't quite understand what you said just now.
Okay,
Sorry.
so the penalties, right? Again, the law is very confusing and it's not in layman's terms. So
okay,
it says that this is a penalty, a person who commits an offense under sections 9 and 11. But our section was what, 13 and 14, right?
Yes.
So this first penalty is not applicable to us. So we have to scroll down, and the penalty is a person who commits an offense under sections 12 to 14. Our one is 13 and 14. So this is the first one is in ours. This is our penalty now. Number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2. A person who commits an offense under sections 12 to 14 is liable. A, on summary conviction, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 years, or to a fine not exceeding $500,000, or to both. Or B, on conviction on indictment, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 20 years, or to a fine, or to both.
Okay, all right, good. And so negligence also does not exclude you from these penalties, because let's just think about Michelle Reckley. Michelle Reckley was one of the first persons to be charged with money laundering in the Bahamas. Anybody remember Michelle Reckley from Urban Renewal in Freeport?
Yes, I'm very familiar. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So let's just say she would have, and all of this was in the newspaper, she would have gone into CIBC as well as the Teachers Credit Union. She would have opened accounts and said it was for her salary. So she created her profile by saying, this is for salary, and I expect not more than, let's say, $2,000 to $3,000 in this account each month. So you could read the newspaper article where her account has $1.3 million in it. And so you want to ask, what was CIBC or the Teachers Credit Union doing? Where was the account officer? Where was the triggers in the system? What did the MLRO do? So all of these persons, I imagine, will have to testify in court or show up, or be subpoenaed in some way to answer questions. When these transactions went over her profile, what did the bank do? And so the bank is going to have to provide proof that they would have called her in or reviewed her account and ask her exactly where this money was coming from, and perhaps change her risk rating from low to high because her profile or her transactional activity drastically increased. And so the bank is going to have to provide some information on a conversation that they would have had with her to say, where is this money coming from and what are you doing, to the sum of $1.3 million. But again, at that time, I was like, say, 2016, 17, these were in place. They weren't enforced. There wasn't so much international pressure. But now it's before the courts. And again, when you sign up for these positions, you have to make sure that you're qualified and you understand what your responsibilities are. And so therefore, the responsibility of that account officer was to ensure that she said that she's going to be depositing $2,000 to $3,000 a month. If it goes over, they call her in and they ask her to declare the source of funds, or they change the profile on her account. And this is very important also, not only in the Michelle Reckley case, but there is a case also out there with Edison Sumner. Everybody familiar with Edison Sumner?
Yes.
Okay, so what he did was he was a part in a company where, let's just say, the people, he said, you go down, we open up an account, you go down to Scotia Bank and you deposit your money and we're going to invest in cryptocurrency. And so from that account, they would have gone to Scotia Bank, established a profile. I expect 20 customers per month to deposit between 10 to 5,000, 5,000 to $10,000, and this account is for cryptocurrency. And so therefore, everything should have been okay when persons started coming in and depositing to this account to invest. However, withdrawals started to come out the account, and the withdrawal said, I want a Mercedes Benz, I want a Rolex watch, I want you to send a wire to Bahamas Air to pay for airline tickets. And so therefore, the relationship manager should have questioned, what are these, how does these transactions relate to cryptocurrency? You said this is an omnibus account. You said the persons were only going to deposit a certain amount. You never said that there would be withdrawals for personal items. And so therefore, that relationship manager is responsible for that account. And when these type of transactions come in, they are supposed to stop them. However, like I said, everything wasn't being enforced. Account officers say we're overworked, we're underpaid, we don't have time in the day to review these accounts, and sometimes they slip through the cracks. Even if one or two slips through the crack, you are required to do a review depending on the risk rating on the account. And so you can't be that negligent, and when you do the review, not realize that this person has been asking for Bahamas Air tickets, um, uh, Mercedes Benz, and this account is for cryptocurrency. And so what happened was a lot of persons lost their money. Okay, and of course, the company closed down. Edison Sumner was banned from the Securities Commissions for 10 years. The other guy who was the CEO was banned for life, but those persons lost their money. And so who do you think they're going to go after? They want their money back. They're going to go after Scotiabank, because Scotiabank's employees were negligent. Okay, and so you have to ensure that if you're a relationship manager or you work in sales and you have accounts assigned to you, that you are not negligent, and you have to ensure that persons stay within their profile that they establish when they open the account. And things do change and life does happen, and sometimes you do need to make an adjustment to the account, but you have to make that adjustment, or you will find yourself in court or behind bars. Okay, because before it used to be that just the MLRO went to jail, and of course MLROs around the world fought for, we would have spoken to the relationship managers, we would have spoken to the CEO. They are sales driven. If they apply a lot of pressure, everybody needs to go to jail. And so when they updated the new laws, it's not only the MLRO going to jail, but the CEO, the relationship officers, the salespeople, and everybody who were negligent. Okay? So once you work in the financial services sector, ensure that you are aware of what your responsibilities are and what's assigned under your portfolio, under your job description, and ensure that you have sufficient knowledge to carry out those tasks, because we don't want anybody to end up in jail. And like I think I said this last class, that in Brazil you are guilty until proven innocent, and so the governor of the central bank has been to jail, the president has been impeached, there are many bank officials that have been to jail across the world, okay, because they were negligent. So ensure that does not happen to one of us. Okay?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Any questions? We understand the tipping off. We see the AML framework. We know that how it was established from the 40 recommendations and all these other the Vienna Convention, the Palmero Convention, the Wolfsburg principles, all those combined. We put those into law, and then central bank would have written guidelines that is easily interpreted, and we carry out in our institution. After the central bank guidelines, each individual institution has their own policy and procedure. Some policies are more stringent. You would find it more conservative on the Canadian side. On the Swiss bank side, you would see that they fight with the law and they try and say we don't. They are not as half as conservative as the Canadian bank. So it just depends on what type of institution that you work in. Canadians are more strict. The Swiss are more lax. Okay, just so you would know. Any questions on the laws, on the framework? And again, it's just an overview.
Will we have to know all of these laws for the exams? I mean, like.
I mean, you don't have to know all of them, but you should quote. Again, COCA is the Proceeds to Crime Act. Again, any penalty, most persons would quote the tipping off and the penalty or the failure to disclose. And so it just depends on what questions you're going to answer. Again, if you're going to answer a question on terrorism, of course you quote the Anti-Terrorism Act.
Okay, it depends on what you're talking about.
Right. Right.
Okay.
You don't have to remember them from your head. Definitely the laws are too long.
I know.
But you have to have a referral point. You have to be information seeking and know how to do research and know where to get the information from.
Will questions be asked about like newspaper articles and things like that?
So that's how you get more points, because we test understanding, we don't test memory. And so if you're able to apply this to your essay, like if we were to ask a question on the Michelle Reckley case, and you could say, well, obviously somebody failed to disclose. It was either negligence or right out failure to disclose, and in this case, because this is what happened.
Okay. So,
you know. So
all right.
Once it's relevant, you get the points. And like I say, for everyday issues, you get more points because you prove your understanding.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? Everybody clear? Clear as mud?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So we'll go on to chapter 4, and chapter 4 talks about statutory requirements. And remember, I think I would have said a statutory requirement is required by law. And remember, we talked about persons who fighting the compliance department every time the AML training comes around. That is annually, because we are overworked. We don't have time for this AML training, but if the company does not complete it, they can be fined. Remember, we talked about that in the first class?
Yes.
You all promise not to fight them any longer, to be diligent, and when you'll see that AML training come around, you'll do it right away. Okay, very good. So there are 5 statutory requirements that are required by law. And the first one is identification. Then there is record keeping. Then there is monitoring. You must monitor the accounts. And that's how you find out the profile would have changed if there are differences. Then there is training. And then there's a requirement for each establishment to have a MLRO on staff. And we know what the MLRO is, the Money Laundering Reporting Officer. Correct?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, good. So the statutory requirement for identification. And across the board, industry wide in the financial services sector, I attended a seminar where the Securities Commission, the Gaming Board, all the regulators were there, the central bank, and they said across the board, in all the financial institutions in the Bahamas, there is a, what should I say? The identification statutory requirement is very deficient. Um, and so um, a lot of companies are not asking the right questions, or they simply don't have a process in place where once information would have been collected from clients, that somebody's vetting that information. So a lot of times they have the checker checking the checker. And so what that means is that I'm the line is long, 5 people waiting to open an account. I open these accounts, I rush through them. Okay, you sign all these places. I take that information and then nobody checks it. And then I open this account. And later on, when there's an audit or on-site visit from one of the regulators, they find that the names don't match. So a very common thing that happens is that the person's name is Robert, but they write Bob, they write aliases, or um, we would have copied a passport copy, and the copy is not legible because we didn't adjust the settings on the printer. Or a lot of companies are now keeping forms electronically, and they found that once you would have scanned a photocopy, the picture is distorted, so you can't really make out who that person is. And so all these sorts of problems, or the people didn't sign in the right place. um, Another common thing is that I think proof of address is now relaxed, but
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yes,
companies to
yes.
still get the proof of address, we still get it on the offshore side. We find that this person has a vacation home, and they try to use wherever their the lowest tax is paid. They try to produce that as a proof of address. So you may have, I live in San Diego, California, but a telephone bill from Alive or a cable bill from Alive, and so there's a conflict, right? And so a lot of that has been happening. Another big problem is that we deal with offshore clients, and they speak many different languages, and so central bank had to put in place that all information must be translated
Into
into
English.
English,
Yes.
because just because you speak Mandarin does not mean that central bank has somebody on staff that speaks Mandarin. Okay, so you have to ensure that if you do accept documents in another language from a client, you then translate it before you put it on file. And then, of course, there are the expired documents. And we know, like good standings and passports or what have you, they expire. Then we have people filling out forms that they are not allowed to, because there are some international forms, US forms, the W8 and W9, and the W8 is for non-residents and the W9 are for residents of the US. And you would find that persons would say, oh, I'm now a Bahamian citizen. And we had one instance where the person said, well, I'm a Bahamian citizen, so I'm going to fill out the W8. And then we get a subpoena for him to show up in court, and we find out that he applied for Bahamian residency but never was denied and never contacted the bank. Now a subpoena is coming from the United States for him evading taxes, and we have the wrong form on file, and so now the bank is now charged with collusion. Okay, so there's all sorts of um, issues that come out of the identification statutory requirement. And what will happen is institutions set up a preparer and then a vetter or a checker, a second check, then all of this would decrease. But a lot of times institutions don't want to spend the cash to have that second person as a checker or a verifier. So they have the checker checking the checker, and that causes a lot of problems. Okay, but there are two main constituents of a person's identity: the physical identity, which is the name, the date of birth, a registration number, what have you, and then the activity undertaken, which is the profile. What is this account for? It's for school fees. How much school fees do you pay? I pay $2,000 to $5,000 a year. I pay it 3 times a year. Um, and this is the amount of deposits, and this is how often I'm going to do it. We don't stick to that profile. Once that account is open, if we don't have a very savvy system that will give us a red flag in the back, the tellers don't know these profiles. So as persons are coming into the bank, they're just depositing and withdrawing and not even knowing that these people would have been over their threshold. And so back in the day, how we were trained was that the central bank put out a specific limit. And so first the limit was of $5,000. So persons were just depositing 4,099. Then they increased it to $10,000. So then the persons deposit 9,099. Now it's $15,000. And so now they're depositing, guess what amount?
49.99.
49.99. Okay, so we know what I'm talking about. Okay, good. And so that is the only thing that tellers pay attention for. If you come with a large sum of cash over a particular amount, then I need to do a declaration. Source of funds, I'll ask you where the funds came from. But if you do $4,000 and the limit now is 50, and I don't have to ask you any questions, and I'm not even familiar with your profile, I can't see that. And so I don't know that you're over it. And so a lot of these things happen post. The teller would have already taken the money in the background. The compliance department has a system that'll say, well, Miss Bullet deposited 5,000 on July 1st, and then 5,000 again on July 3rd and on July 15th. So she would have exceeded that limit. So now you need to block her account and ask her to come in and declare the source of funds. Okay. So you want to ensure that you not only verify the physical identity, but you are aware of the profile and how it works. So again, this identification statutory requirement calls for the full name and address, two or more means of contacting the customer, because again, the requirement for the proof of address has been relaxed, but on the offshore side, we still ask for a proof of address for tax purposes. And then there's a self-certification form for CRS and FACA. The date and place of birth. Again, there's a big controversy between nationality and citizenship. I believe nationality is where you're born, and I believe you can apply for citizenship. And there's been a grand debate over that for many years, but it just depends on your institution and where you work. The purpose of the account and the nature of the account, or the profile of the account, or the nature of the relationship is if it's a business account. Okay. And so again, we use passport. It really depends. The law says you need one proof of ID. When I worked in Royal Bank, again, Royal Bank was Canadian. They're more conservative. They make way for human error. So they ask for two forms of ID. And a lot of people come in and they ready to fight us. Why? The law says this. You're making it more difficult to do business. Why do you need two forms of ID? Again, it was the Royal Bank's policy. So your policy internally can be more stringent than what the law says, but it can't be less. So you can't say, oh, okay, but the law says one piece of ID, we ain't gonna ask for none. No, then that's how you get a fine, or that's how you go to jail. But you can be more stringent. You can put something in place to ensure that you're not never in trouble with the regulators, which is like the conservative Canadian way. The Swiss, they say no, if we could get rid of all IDs, that would be good. Okay, so we ask for the passport, the driver's license, and what have you. We find out the nationality, we find out occupation and the employer. If you are risk rated and you're risk rated low or medium, then we ask you for source of income, which means where do you work? Um, how long have you been there, or a reference letter? I see now the credit unions are asking for a job letter when you want to open an account. Also, Commonwealth Bank asks for a job letter to open an account. So again, that's how they represent source of income. However, if you go into these institutions and you're risk rated high, then you are required to provide source of wealth. And so source of wealth can be, I inherited this money from my grandfather. Here's a copy of the will. I bought a piece of property. Here's the conveyance. The insurance paid me out. Here's a copy of the policy. Okay, so there's a difference between source of income and source of wealth, and that is just determined on how you are risk rated. And then, of course, the estimated level of the account activity, the balances, how many deposits, the frequency, how often are you going to be depositing? Okay, and so once the bank would have gotten all this information in, um, then they are to risk rate that um, person and find out if they are high, medium, or low. And if you are risk rated high, your account should be reviewed annually. If you are risk rated low, um, or medium, low is every 2 years, sorry, every 3 years, and medium is every 2 years. But again, you can flex around with the high versus low and medium. Some people only have high and low, or some people only have medium and high. It just depends. But you have to have some risk category that you share with the regulator and they would approve it. Once you would have gotten all this information, they must be certified copies. So if that person did not walk into your bank and hand you their passport and you copied it, then you are not allowed to stamp that certified true and correct copy. Most in the retail branches, and I know most of us work in the retail, we do have persons walking in with all their identification, and we are allowed to stamp that certified true and correct. However, in the offshore world, a lot of information is sent via a third party or by email, and the law allows you 30 days to get the original. So what happens is we ask for certified copies, and I mean, they've expanded who can certify it. So that person, if this was coming from Switzerland and they wanted to open an account, they could get it certified by an accountant, an attorney, a minister, and just like how we do our passport pictures, the notary public and the teachers are now allowed to also do it. Now, there's also another step in certification, because a lot of companies like, sorry, a lot of countries like Dubai and countries down in South America have had a lot of fraud. And so there's something called the Hague Convention, where um, I may say, if this comes out of Russia or out of Dubai, I'm not even going to accept this from a teacher or a corporate secretary or a notary public. There's something called a Hague Convention, and you go to your what is it? You go to your minister of finance, and they call the document apostille. And so you have to actually go to a government office and get the document apostille, and that's the only way we'll accept it. Have we heard about apostille before?
I've heard about it.
Okay, okay, good, good. Another thing with apostille, in the UAE and Dubai, there's also been a lot of crime, and so therefore, um, persons are opening up accounts for citizens of Dubai, and Dubai has said that if you accept a verified copy from a notary public or a teacher or what have you, you take that at your own risk, because they have a procedure that goes through their Supreme Court, and so therefore, they're not even doing a whole steal, but I don't know if they're part of the Hague Convention. And so what you do is you apply to the Supreme Court, and it takes you about 3 months to get these documents certified. And again, the Bahamas only allows you, the law only allows you 30 days. And the offshore world is very competitive. You don't want to turn away any client. And so and these people want to open their accounts immediately, and they want their money to be wired. So you can open the account, have the money wired, but I would suggest you put that money on hold until you would have gotten that certification then from the courts in Dubai, or again, like they say, you open that account at your own risk. So you want to ensure that it's in natural English, and you um, have it certified properly depending on the laws of the country that you're dealing with. Okay, and so of course, many years ago, we went to the bank, and when they came up with these forms, and they say, my God, to open an account, I given you my money, and you need my whole life story. And so we would fight these people and say, no, this is not necessary. If a document expired, they turned you away and they said, no, we can't open it with an expired passport. Again, all of this is law. And back then it wasn't being enforced. Today it is being enforced. So if the persons turn you away, please know that it's the law. Don't fight the people. Just do what they say in order to open the account. For corporate clients, of course, you need certificate of incorporation, articles of association, the name and location of the registered office, the nature and description of the business. If it's a bearer share account, you need letters of undertaking to ensure um, that those shares are not transferred without the bank knowing who the rightful owner is, because a bearer share is different from a registered share. A bearer share is you can just transfer it, and let's just say Ms. Willis would have gone into the bank, open an account with a bearer share, and then I transfer it to Ben Laden, right? And so these letters of undertaking say that I promise not to transfer this share to Ben Laden without letting the bank know and approve that Ben Laden can open up an account with them. Okay, so that there's a lot of risk surrounding bearer shares. A board resolution authorizing the opening of the account and ensuring who the signatories are. There was a company that was closing down. The messenger stole the letterhead and went to the bank and opened up the account and said that he was able to negotiate the check. So every time he picked up a check and he deposited, he was able to withdraw, and the people were looking for their check. So there's a lot of fraud that came out of all of these requirements, and this is why it's today a requirement, because again, we are very reactive, and so these things, we would add loads of fraud surrounding incidences like this. And so all of this, these laws or these policies and procedures have been put in place to ensure that um, the institutions are protected and the financial services sector is not infiltrated by the money launderers and terrorist financiers. Okay, is this clear? We all very quiet. Any questions so
Yes.
far?
No.
This is good?
So far, so good.
Okay, good. So again, with the shareholders, we want to register shareholders, then we want to register members and directors. Again, we want to, once we get all these names, we world check them, or we use LexisNexis. We familiar with world check or LexisNexis?
Heard about them, but
World
not
check.
never used them. Yeah.
Right. And so what we do is we run those names through there to make sure that there's no criminal activity or any background information these systems would produce. And it helps us to decide whether or not we are going to, if this person is rectable or not, because in our AML directive, we should have a list of persons, types of persons we will not open up an account with, or undesirable businesses. And so it'll just read that persons who have been charged with money laundering or terrorist financing, we will not do business with again, because there is a reputational effect. Of course, the persons won't say only Ben Laden, but Ben Laden had an account with the Commonwealth Bank of the Bahamas, and of course that won't be a good reputation for Commonwealth Bank. Persons around the world will say, "Oh, I got to pull my money out of Commonwealth Bank because they do business with terrorists, and we don't want to support that." So on this shareholders register, we want everybody who has more than 10% of the business. And so in the memorandums and articles, it should say that we issued 50,000 shares. And so if we issued 50,000 shares on the shareholders register, 50,000 shares should be allotted to various persons. So again, people always try and find a workaround. So the law says anybody who owns 10%, so it used to be 25%, and then we had to drop it again because people were saying I own now 24%, but a lot of people still don't want to be known. They want to be under the wraps. They don't want you to know that they own this company. And so now that the law has dropped it to 10%, you would see persons owning 7 and 8% of shares in a particular company. Okay, I don't know if any of you deal with company accounts and you've seen that.
Yes,
That's how
ma'am.
they with the threshold. Okay, good. So you all know what I'm talking about. Okay, very good. So you want to ensure who are the players on the account, who does what, who are the responsible parties, and you want to world check all of these persons, all the directors, all of the members, anybody who has a partner business. Then there's something called a good standing. A certificate of good standing just means that you paid all your taxes, you're not struck off the register, and the company is still in good standing. And so again, when you first open an account, when you first establish a business, you don't get a good standing the first year. So you have to put a note in your system the year, 1 year on their 1 year anniversary to request a good standing. And a lot of persons never ever remember to request that good standing. And then the good standing expires annually. And so every year you have to set up to request this from the registered office. But again, um, a lot of stuff is online. Some things are online right here at our registry, and so you can request it from the registry if you're able to get it. It's easier than getting it from the client because once what you will find is, particularly for wealthy clients, once they open an account and you get those information and that account is opening, unless you block that, that's the only way you could get any type of information for them after that account is open. So if there's an expired passport, if somebody gets married, if somebody leaves, I mean, it's a horrendous process trying to track these people down. And again, this is another area where you see the financial institutions do not invest any money. They don't invest money in the verifier, and they don't invest money in tracking um, expired documentation, and hence this is why the regulators are saying across the board there are very deficient accounts. And if we were to show up in court with these documents, these people would be let go free, and then we would be charged with negligence because we would have not done proper due diligence. Okay, so you want to ensure that you have the right players in place to somebody to vet and then somebody to track and follow up, because I know an institution that was about to shut down. They had like 15,000, they had 800 accounts, but 15,000 deficient forms because somebody didn't sign it properly. And that's another thing. Particularly in the wealth management or the high net worth clients, these people have lawyers, they are very smart, they are very wealthy. And so, in your general terms and conditions, where you normally have them to initial or to sign a signature and they miss it out and say, oops, I forgot, they didn't forget. These people are very savvy. They know what they are doing. They are not signing in that particular spot because if something was to happen, they do not agree with that, and they will show up to court with their copy and say that, well, I didn't agree with it, and they opened the account anyway. So you want to be careful with that. When persons miss spots on a particular form and they don't fill it out, most of the time it's intentional. And another thing that has happened across the board is that because this would have come all the way from Switzerland by DHL and it took 3 months, the relationship manager will say, oh, they missed this spot, I'm just going to fill it in for them. Or they signed wrong, I'm going to sign on their behalf. Don't do it. Don't do it, because that person has their copy. And again, why are we getting these copies? To show up in court if we have to. But if their copy is different from your copy, then again, the client can prove that we tampered with their document and now it's no longer a legitimate document. So be careful of that. Be careful of also stamping the certified true and correct copy. Lots of salespersons do that. Again, come from across the world, or they forgot this one document. I'm telling you, send it right back. The other day, I had to call my CEO and I said, listen, sir, I have a SDR to file. I got a production order. They want to, this person is charged with fraud. They want copies of the passport, copies of the proof of address, and all of this. And who you think signature was on that? I said, have you ever met this person? They say, no, I always talk to him on the phone. All the documents fraudulent.
Mhm.
But who certified true and correct the document? The CEO. So what you think happened?
Hmm.
Okay. So be very careful of that. Okay. But again, in the essence of time or to open this account, we just think that, okay, this is the easiest way to do it. Don't do it. Okay. Don't do it. Um, so again, That's the statutory requirement of identification. Again, I talked about source of funds and source of wealth. I talked about the balances and establishing the profile and how the profile should be established. And then when we talk about the statutory requirement of monitoring, I will go further into what you do with this profile and how you ensure that you don't go to jail because you are ensuring that that person stays within the frequency of the transactions as well as the amount and the salary that you would have verified. So you can't have a $2,000 salary a month and you're expecting $10,000 every month. You have to question, so where's the extra $8,000 coming from every month? Okay, we can't just open those accounts and say, oh, I didn't realize it. No longer are we just gonna be judged with negligence. We are gonna be judged, fine, and we will go to jail. Okay, so you want to be careful um, of all of this. And I think the book said that for at least two directors, because some of the, like we were the Royal Bank of Canada, and it was 10 employees that were on the signatory list. And so many companies back in the day said, oh, we're not going to verify the 10 employees, just two of them, but now the law has changed that you have to verify all. Okay, so that means you have to get passports, proof of address, and you have to world check them, etc. On all the members, the directors, and of the companies. Okay, is that clear? Any questions regarding identification?
No.
No, no, good. Yulan, you
No, all
keeping
clear.
clear? Okay, good. Okay, so the next requirement is record keeping. And again, all copies of all documents, all the due diligence which you would have collected, all of the transactional data and what have you has to be kept. Now, central bank says 5 years. I think the gaming board also says 5 years. However, the Securities Commission says 7 years. So what this means is 5 years after that account would have closed, you I would I can send to you for copies, or I can request that you provide information on this account. So even like I'm working at a bank now that's closing down, and the central bank has sent at least 3 letters already saying reminding us of our statutory requirement and telling us that if we fail to keep these records for section 15 of the financial institution commits an offense on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $20,000 if an individual or $100,000 for a body or corporate. And they're saying for each document that we cannot produce, this is what we will be charged. So again, this office has a parent in out of Switzerland, and there's no way around it. So even though the bank is closing down, they still have to keep all of the documents for the next 7 years because they have a securities arm. So if you don't have a securities arm and you are a bank or only the gaming board or the insurance commission, then you can keep for 5 years. But essentially, five years after the account would have closed. And if you are a trust um, office or you deal with trust, because trusts are legal documents or legal entities within their own, you have to keep those documents for 25 years. And with any bank too, there are some documents that you keep indefinitely. Again, they told us, please let them know who's going to be keeping this information indefinitely should they need information about the memo in us or how we did some business or what have you, or the corporate governance information. Okay, so that's a statutory requirement of record keeping and what is required. Everything that you would have requested for the client must be kept for 5 years minimum if you're banking 7 years if you are a securities company. Okay. The statutory requirement of training. Again, we talked about this. Everybody, AML training must be submitted each year. And before, we never used to do a test. We just would have a lunch and learn or send out information on the training. However, the law has been upgraded, and when the regulators or audit come in, they want to see if you would have tested your employees and what their test results are. Central Bank the other day asked me to submit the test results from the staff. Any a person who would have failed the test, they would have wanted them to retake the test and then submit that. So they've really been hands-on. A part of all the changes what they would have made to enforce these laws is that the central bank created an analytics department and each bank or financial institution now has a relationship manager. So did the Securities Commission. They created an analytics department, and there's hands-on where before you would have called the regulator and waited 3 weeks to hear back from them. No, they call you every day. They send you emails every day. They expect compliance to liaise with them and respond immediately. Okay, and so they want you to be trained annually. They want the training log. If there's somebody who did not train, they want to know um, what action was taken against this employee who did not attend the training. Because again, the higher ups feel like they don't have to come to the training or it's just for the local staff. And what has happened with the training in this 2018, um, one of the regulators was taking the ITA program with me, and she said, I was at a board meeting doing an on-site visit, and I said, "Oh, can I pop into your board meeting?" The person said, "Yes, yes," and she said she was just having a water cooler conversation, and she had asked one of the board members what a PEP was, and he did not know. Everybody knows what a PEP is.
Yes.
Politically exposed.
You're right, a politically exposed person. And so from that conversation, she said she was very, very astonished that this person was at the board level and did not know what a PEP is. So just out of that conversation and the laws being updated, there's now a board policy on the board of directors on what they should do, how qualified they should be, how long they can sit on the board before it's their change, their training as well. And so there is now a mandatory training, not only for the staff, but also for the board, and that is also annual. So the book goes on to and this is a very popular question on the exam, um, what type of a training new employees should get. And it talks about is in the first month of employment, the process for reporting suspicious transactions to the MLRO, written policies and procedures, what the legal requirements are, and any personal obligation to report, which is failure to disclose, right? And so when for all new employees, that's the recommended training. For employees dealing directly with the public, training should be focused on issues that may give rise to suspicion and the procedures to be adopted when a transaction is deemed to be suspicious. They should be made aware of the company's policies for dealing with occasional customers, particularly when it involves large cash transfers, money transfers, negotiable instruments, certificate of deposits, or letters of credit and other guarantees. Okay? Account opening officers, training should be the same as those dealing directly with the public. Additionally, training should be provided in respect of the need to verify identity and on the business's own account opening and customer verification procedures. Okay, and again, of course, the process of reporting a suspicious transaction should be included. Managers, back office, and operation supervisors. Training should cover all aspects of anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism, procedures for those with their responsibility for supervising or managing staff. Okay, this will include all the offensive and the penalties from the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Financial Transaction Reporting Act, and any non-reporting and assisting money launderers procedures relating to the service of production of restraint orders. I'm not going to finish read the rest of that, but we get the gist of who should be trained, which is everybody, what level of training they should get, and what is required. So again, a lot of people just write a lot of fluff. This is a very easy question to answer, but people just give a lot of fluff. So please ensure that if you attempt this question on any exam, you specifically divide it in new employees get this type of training, employees with the public, you categorize it properly and you say what are the levels of training that should be given. And it's a very easy question. Okay. And again, most of us work in the financial services sector industry, so we see this training all the time and we know what is required. Correct?
Good, yes.
Okay, ask me some questions. No questions? Question. Only me one talking, nobody talking back to me. Y'all would have read these chapters already, right? And come to discuss, right? Miss Payne, I ain't hear from you all day.
I mean, Miss Bullet, you're really straightforward. I just had taken this in and making my notes.
Okay, taking and making. Okay, so this clear.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
yeah, I just want to make sure because I want you to be able to retain this and put this back put this back on paper and show prove your understanding. I don't want you to say Miss Bullet just talked for 2 hours. I couldn't even hear her voice no more after the first hour. I didn't even know what she was talking about. That ain't happening there. Nikita, you awake?
No, ma'am, I'm right here awake.
You awake?
Wide awake.
Okay, good. I know it's a holiday. Be ready. We want to make plans and you can't go along. Hey, I want you to get straight to your holiday. Okay, so let me go on to monitoring. A financial institution must have systems and controls in place to monitor on an ongoing basis. And this is very important because, again, we have responsibilities that could lead us to prison. And so therefore, we need to ensure that we are aware of what we have to do manually or what the system is capable of doing. And so again, I'm working with a offshore bank that's closed. I'm just there to close them out. This is the second one where I was just appointed to close them out. Okay, and what I've seen since I've gotten there, and I had to liaise with the central bank and tell them, this, what happens is that we will check accounts when we open them. And so we're no longer opening accounts because they're closing. However, today I'm a law-abiding citizen. Today is a holiday. You know what has happened on holidays. I stress out from the hurricane and the pandemic. I go out and commit a crime, right? And so today Miss Bullet is law-abiding, but tomorrow she commits a crime. And if I pay my buddies on the side, they don't haul me across the courts. Y'all don't know Miss Bullet going to jail. Right? I get out next week Friday before class, or I can teach you all right from my prison cell, right? So how do you keep abreast of to ensure that your customers aren't doing any illegitimate stuff or becoming criminals overnight? And so what you have to do is to find out what does your company have in place. And so the prior company that I worked through, the Royal Bank of Canada, they had a system that checked names every night against WorldCheck. They had an automatic system, and the next day when we got to work, it would spit a report out for us and say Ms. Bullet committed this crime overnight, or has been charged. Right? The bank that I work to now does not have such a savvy system. Just a very small bank. And so central bank approached me and said, so how do you know that these persons are not partaking in criminal activity? And what I had to do is I said, I don't know, but at this point of closing, they're not going to invest in the system that's going to spit out information at me the next day. So therefore, the central bank said, you have 2 months to confirm the workaround. And so the workaround that I came up with is that I will manually, because there are only 50 clients left, go into WorldCheck every quarter and WorldCheck them and to ensure that they are not criminals now. And do you know that the first, I've only been there since January, and in March when I did it for the first time, and I had to attest the central bank that I did do it and I did not find any suspicious activity. Do you know I had to complete 4 suspicious transactions reports? Okay,
Wow.
from these 50 clients. Yes, so
My
some of the
goodness.
so one of the directors was arrested in Panama. Another one of the clients had gone to jail. Another one was charged with money laundering. Another one was charged with tax evasion. So of course I had to fill out all these suspicious transaction report and let them know that hey, these people had infiltrated our system, and so we have this money here. So You can't take it for granted. I couldn't say, well, I only worked there for 6 months and they was closing down anyway. And so it wouldn't have been, that wasn't my business. When they go again, these records have to be maintained for 7 years. And when they go and they find that this person been to the Bahamas at the bank where I was working, you think they're coming looking for Miss Bullet and say, Miss Bullet, but you was the compliance officer at that time. You didn't know? I was negligent, right? And so it's a good thing that central bank had enforced that workaround, because I was thinking too, with this place closing down, let's hope and pray that these people be legit and don't do nothing wrong. But enforced it. Okay, so what you need to do is go to your institutions and find out exactly what systems they have in place, especially if you're a relationship manager. Are they world checking? Is it done manually? Is there something that you need to do manually? Okay, and how do you know, if you have 800 clients, how do you know if these persons are staying within their profile or doing what they are supposed to do? Another thing, we spoke about PEPs, and I don't know if I said this. If we had the client of Brave Davis's new son-in-law, so his daughter would have gotten married, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, and when he would have opened his account, he would have been rated, risk rated low. But now he has married Brave Davis' daughter. How was he rated, and what is he now?
PEP.
Right. So now he's a PEP, and so he should have, we should have risk rated him high risk, right? And so,
Yes.
but how do we even know this information? This is where monitoring comes in place. And the relationship managers for these accounts, or the account officers for these accounts, are required to do a review. And so he would have been risk rated low. And so on the third year, this is when you go and print out the history of the account to make sure that he stayed within the profile. This is how you see if he bought a Mercedes or a Rolex watch with the people money, and you could be liable. And this is how you call him up on the phone, because you are now required to know your customer, right? And so you ask these questions. Anything substantial, any substantial change in your life? And they say like what? I say marriage, children, whatever. And and then you have to ask, oh, you got married? Oh, congratulations. Who did you marry? Any peps or anything? Oh, yes, I married Brave Davis' daughter. Ding, 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 ding. But if you are afraid to ask, if you don't have a relationship with your clients, if you don't do your reviews, and a lot of account managers have their reviews piled up for months, this is how you don't find out this information. Okay.
Right. But then they would say, well, they don't have the time
Okay, but
because
if
they're
you have
so
the time,
busy.
okay, so you will have a lot of time sitting in jail.
That's true. That's true.
Lots,
I mean, I'm
lots
just
of
saying that
time.
would be the excuse.
Yeah, but
That,
it's you have to do it, and this is
to find the
why.
time. Yeah.
Yes, this is why they have made these statutory requirements required by law, because everybody's overworked and underpaid. There's never enough time in the day. However, you have to block out some time. You have to organize yourself, because, like, even with compliance, it's very complex. There's lots of follow up. There's a lot of people that you have to push to get things done. That's why it's good to have the interpersonal skills. But you have to get it done, or your company will be fined, and there's no
Right.
bonus when you get fined, or you could possibly go to jail
That's true.
because you are assisting this money launderer, because they know you overworking underpaid, and you don't have time to follow up and go and word check them if the system does not give you this information. So I want you to go to your institutions and find out, is there something that I should be doing manually, or does the system assist, or how do we know that Miss Bullet didn't commit a crime overnight? Okay,
Miss Bullet,
protect yourself. Yes.
what is in the instance whereas it's not on your job description and it's just the role of the compliance officer, and even though you open the account, would that still fall under us?
Do you have accounts assigned to you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so if you, so it depends on how your business is set up. If you're just there to open up the account, then you open up the account and do your initial check. Somebody else's responsibility is to have the account assigned to them, and they are to monitor that account. That's correct, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that person who is the relationship manager is the responsible person who will go to jail, who is
Oh,
required
okay.
to do these reviews, who is required to monitor the account. But as an account opening representative, you should want to sit with that person and learn to see the types of changes that are made or the types of mistakes that you make in the account opening process, like things that you could look up front for and to ensure that it makes sense. Because what I found in a previous institution is that their form did not ask the correct person questions to even generate a profile to put in the system. So that was a big thing. And central bank said, you have 800 clients. I don't care what you do, but you need to get the client to sign, each client to sign what type of account this should be and the activity undertaken on this account, how many transactions they're going to be doing, what's the frequency, and what's the purpose. Because there's no way for you to establish a profile. There's no way for you to risk rate this client. So in the whole organization had a deficiency, and central bank gave them like 6 months to complete that task or shut them down. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
you want to look out for these things. So sit with that person, look at what they do in the review, see if there's a way you could, ask more questions or just verify that what you were doing on the back end works. Okay,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
let me just tell you another instance that happened to a very major bank. um in the family islands is general delivery, right?
Yes.
And at a point, um, the government had said, well, even if it's general delivery, you are required to know your customer. You have to tell us where these people work, and so I mean where these people live. And so it was a big something that happened in one of the islands. Let's say Dorian with Abaco, and the bank had to repossess a lot of these houses. Now imagine you being a new person from Nassau going down to Abaco, and every file that you pull out say general delivery. What gonna happen to your compliance? I mean your collections department?
Boy, yeah,
How
go.
they repossessing these houses?
Hmm.
They don't know where the people live. And then
Right.
you go to the ask the island people where Miss Bullet live because we're going to repossess a house. They're telling you
Hmm.
that. You could see you're possessing Miss
Right.
Bullet house,
That's
right?
why on the applications they have like directions to your home and
Right, right.
on
So
those
that came out
applications.
of
Yeah.
that because one particular bank had a big problem where the managers had changed and they just simply did not know where these people live or where these houses were, and they could not find them. So collections had a big problem, and so out of collections having a problem because they wasn't even paying attention to the proof of address and the statutory requirement, or the proof of address just had general delivery on it, so you didn't know where the people live. When they updated their forms, then they did like how the cable Bahamases do. You have to turn left, turn right, the color
Hmm.
house, and what have you. And this is how we find them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to ensure that you are getting the correct information because you could create a systemic problem within your organization that could affect another department if you don't do what you're supposed to do up front. And like I said, a big problem is once these people open their account, unless they
That's
need
it.
something from you, you can't get nothing. You get it's
Hmm.
like pulling teeth. You can't get no updated information. They always busy. They don't have time to come into the bank. And what
Hmm.
happened? Okay.
Question, Miss Bullard. So I know just now you would have said that, once that account is open, it's difficult to get in contact with these persons. So could an account be frozen on the basis of there being a situation where your information is no longer current?
Yes, and so a lot of banks do freeze it, but I always worked in the offshore world. And when these people have $10 million, you don't freeze their account because they close it out and they go somewhere else. And so because it's so competitive, a lot of banks don't they, before they make a decision to freeze that account, they look at the balance, because everybody's concerned about the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you have to be careful who account you freezing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this account might only have $10 on it, but the next account that he signs on have 10 million. So you can't freeze that, right?
Hmm.
Right. So those type of things happen. So you wanna ensure that you maintain a relationship with these persons where you can call them up on the phone and say, please take my call. I need this. We're having a regulatory visit, or this is expired. I need to get this information. Okay, but you sometimes you have no, depending on the type of institution you work for, whether they respect compliance and they ain't only money driven, and they, you know, follow these requirements and they even know them, because some people don't even know that these are statutory requirements. Okay, so it just depends. But freezing it is the only way too. But you have to be diplomatic about everything that you do. You know, because these once you freeze it, of course they have an emergency. Somebody but to die, you gotta release the whole, or somebody could die. Like they just come up with extreme stuff with you know, cases and where I work. It just depends on your institution, right? Okay, so the reporting, the MLRO, again, the law says that anybody that suspicious transaction form is online, anybody can fill out a suspicious transaction form. However, your company has an internal policy. They have a person appointed, the money laundering reporting officer. I would have said in the last class, it's a regulated function, which means that they can put an ad in the paper, hire you as the compliance officer. However, the regulator has to approve you. Okay? And the regulator has put that in place because they want to make sure the person is qualified, they have sufficient experience, they understand the responsibilities of their job. Once I was approved by the regulator, they said we need your personal phone number and we need your personal address and we need a personal email address outside of the bank that we can contact you should we need to have a private conversation with you. A lot of institutions, you know, they worry about their bottom line. So they're sales driven. Remember, compliance makes no money for the business. Sales makes all the money. And so therefore all the funding goes into sales. And so sales is like highly respected. More than likely the CEO is a part of the sales team. And so there's a lot of influence and a lot of intimidation from the sales team for accounts that some accounts that should not be open. Okay, and so because that has been a problem for many years, the central bank has also put in place that each year the MLRO can come and sit with them and speak with them in confidence. And there have been money laundering officers have gone in and said, listen, these accounts should not be open, but I'm intimidated. They say I won't get bonus if the account does not open and what have you. So you talk to them, and some CEOs in Nassau have been, I know at least 3 that have been removed. Okay, so you can't be afraid to speak up. You have to know the risk appetite of the business, because like I'm hearing some feedback. Can somebody mute their mic, please?
I have a question when you're done, when you're, yes.
Okay. Somebody can mute their mic? Okay, good, thank you. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, okay, what are the qualifications and specific skills you need for an MLRO? Like basically, you know, when your information is sent to the Securities Commission to approve you, what are they looking for? The skills and, you know, like your job functions, what in particular are they looking for to approve you?
Okay, so you should have 3 to 5 years of experience in the financial services sector.
Okay.
Of gaming or banking or insurance or compliance commission, what have you. So they're looking for the 3 to 5 years of experience.
Okay.
And they're looking for the designation, the ICA or the ACAMS.
Okay.
Okay, and so this is the introductory level to the ICA. Then there's intermediate, and then there is governance, risk, and compliance 9 months, and AML 9 months. And so you would have to have that full diploma at the end for them to even consider you.
So that's the only thing that you need. You have to have the ICA or ACAM for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. You can't get approved without that. And you have to have the 3 to 5 years of experience. So I said in the first class, the Compliance Commission regulated the real estate companies, the law firms, and the accountants last year. And a lot of lawyers showed up in the class trying to get the designation. But what they did not realize is that they didn't have the experience in compliance, and there was no compliance department ever established in these law firms,
Okay.
unless they did it on their own. If
Mhm.
and that's for the ones that have the corporate service providers right?
Okay.
So
Mhm.
they tried to get the designation, but they didn't have any compliance experience, and so they still weren't approved. But one
Okay.
person said, "Well, in 5 years, I will have the experience, and so therefore, I don't have to, the costs associated with getting a compliance officer and
Mhm.
putting all the framework in place. I
Mhm.
will bear it now. In 5 years, I'll at least cut out the salary and can do it myself."
What if you don't deal with, what if you work with a corporation that doesn't really deal with cash? You're just a financial service provider, but all the activities are at the people you incorporate at their risk. You don't have any, you think you're going to be likely to be approved in a case like that where
Yeah,
you don't have cash, you're not a phone, you don't have that cash coming in, you don't deal with cash at all, or securities, all you do is set up do the incorporations, but
yeah, that's fine. Are you trying to get into a cash and business now? Then
no,
that
no,
might
no, I'm saying if you're
no.
not in a cash business, you just like more or less incorporate companies
Yeah,
and
so
stuff.
if you're staying in the same field and if you
Mhm.
go into the same type of company, then you shouldn't have a problem. You don't have to have the cash experience if you're dealing with cash.
No, no,
And
what I
if
mean is,
if you cross over to a bank, then
mhm,
they may question, do you have any cash experience at all?
mhm.
Are you familiar with A, B, or C?
No, no, what I mean is to become an MLRO, right? You're saying you need the ICA or the ACAM or be in the field, right? But I'm just asking if what if you apply to be an MLRO, but all you do, you basically do incorporations. You don't deal with, you don't take on the risk is at your the risk is on your clients. They are companies, you don't have that risk.
No, but what I'm saying is, where are you applying to be the MLRO? At a similar business,
No,
a
just
similar
as
institution?
no, I'm saying if someone wants to apply at let's say just want to be they work in a financial, what do you call it now? A financial like provider, financial provider, right?
Financial service provider.
Right,
Yeah,
financial
but that's
service
what I'm
provider.
saying. If you are
Mm,
going to another financial service provider as the MLRO, then no,
uh-huh,
there's no requirement for cash. But if you're
uh-huh,
going to a bank, then
uh-huh,
they may ask you for, have you ever had cash training? You see what I mean?
uh-huh.
Or if you're going to like a money services business like Cash and Go
Right,
or yeah, or
uh-huh.
one of the gaming, they may say, well, we want somebody with cash experience. But
No, no, I'm saying what if you work in a company that you don't deal with cash or
that's
trading or
fine. It does
anything?
not it does not matter. Again,
Uh-huh,
you will not find somebody who would have worked in all fields. You know what I mean?
uh-huh. Yeah.
What you're doing is you're looking for somebody who
Mm-hmm,
can learn, who have the
mm-hmm.
interpersonal skills,
Right.
who and who is qualified. So your qualifications may be, we have people who only would have worked in gaming and they
Okay.
cross over to the banks
What if
and they're
okay, what if
approved.
they work in gaming and they don't have this ICA or ACAM? Will they still
Then
be able
no,
to be?
no, you have to have to be approved of the right. And so
Uh,
if you're not approved, then they make it a requirement. They said, okay, this person has sufficient um um experience. Can they complete
but
the course
not the
within 2 years?
designation.
Right, and not the designation. But they have say 10 years experience. How long will it
Uh-huh.
take them to complete the designation? They normally give you a time frame.
So you can't get that position unless you finish that.
It's twofold. You have to have the experience as well as
Uh-huh.
the designation.
The
If you don't have
designation.
the
Okay.
designation, then they
Uh-huh.
allow it on a case by
Uh-huh.
case basis and say, I give this
Okay.
person 2 years to complete the
Uh-huh.
course.
And
You
they
see what I mean?
allow them to take that position
So
pending that. Okay.
if you have say 10 years experience,
Right.
or if you had a
Uh-huh.
recent degree, like if you recently completed your bachelor's degree or you recently completed your MBA, because
Okay.
if you look in the papers now for the top tier positions, they ask you, we want somebody who would have completed their MBA in the last 3 years or in the last
Okay.
5 years.
Right.
You
Right.
see what I mean? Because
Uh-huh.
people would have completed their MBA 20 years ago. It's no longer relevant.
Okay.
You have to do constant upgrading.
Right.
So it's on a case by case basis.
Okay, so they might allow you if you, let's say you have 10 years banking experience. Let's say you don't have the ICA, but they'll say, well, we'll allow it provisionally until you complete the, let's say, the 2 years or whatever's required for that.
Right. But
In
you would
some
find
cases, but
that,
it's a case.
yeah, in
Yeah.
some cases, but you would find that the company wouldn't even hire you for a compliance position if you don't have the ICA unless you have an MBA.
Okay, what about the MLRO, which is isn't that a little bit lower than a compliance position?
No, no, normally the compliance officer is the MLRO.
Okay,
They don't
okay,
hire two separate persons. So whomever is the senior person in the department is the MLRO.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, thank
Okay,
you.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, monitoring, we are required to monitor, ensure the person stay within their profile, ensure that they don't marry and become a pet, or something changes and they become high risk. We are to confirm the transaction type, the frequency and the amount. When we do this review, we are required to know our customers, pick up the phone and call them. Again, the money laundering officer regulated function has to be approved by the regulator. Um, the law says anybody can complete a STR, the suspicious transaction report. However, policy, internal policy to your institution normally says the MLRO will distribute a form, a shorter version of the 6-page suspicious transaction form, and you are to submit that letter or that form to them, and they will then do a further investigation to find out, does this person's profile just need to be updated? Was their review done? Or is this really a suspicious transaction that I need to file with the FIU? So the MLRO makes a decision now. We have had some people in the past say, the law say I can submit this myself, and they going around the MLRO and around their manager. You don't want to do that because you don't want to work for companies if this person is truly terrorist financing and they say, oh, well, Bin Laden is my cousin or we support them, then you don't want to be a part of that institution. But when you find that you go outside of policy, you do end up in a lot of problems. So what I've always thought, once I pass on an issue to my superior, don't worry about it anymore. It's their problem. And so tellers or entry level persons, you're on the front line, you see what's happening out there, you pass it on to your manager or to the MLRO, whatever your company's policy states, and then you leave it. Okay, and tell a subpoena comes if you need to get more information. And remember, gone are the days when you could say below my pay or above my pay grade, or I'm afraid or whatever. Don't sign up for these jobs if you are afraid, because there is a crime when you fail to disclose.
And then also
Okay.
you have to follow up. You can't just pass it on to them and don't follow up, because you have to make sure that they even got your email or whatever, your written
Yeah, but that's
communication
it. But
about.
that's it. Right.
Right.
So again, the process becomes confidential after that. They don't have to tell you that they would have submitted the SDR. That's
Mm-hmm.
no longer with you. And so,
Okay.
or there's an investigation going on. Again,
Mm-hmm.
they want to ensure that we protect persons from tipping off that through
Right.
conversation or sharing this information with people who are not privy to it. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't have, after you would have passed it on, you just leave it. It's the MLRO's job to submit it. If they don't submit it,
Mm-hmm.
you keep your copy where you would have submitted it to them. If
To
there's
them,
any
and that's it. You
investigation,
cover yourself.
you cover yourself, and that's completely
Right.
it. You
Right.
go no
Okay.
further with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. So that's the 5 statutory requirements required by law: identification, the MLRO, monitoring, training, and record keeping. Okay. And of course, that's very popular on the exam, and on your instruction sheet, you would have seen that there's also a question there for you to practice, should be on statutory requirement.
Okay, so
Okay.
all right, just to be clear now, with these questions that you gave us for homework, you were saying that, okay, there are 7 questions. you're saying that once you answer 2, then that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
So, but so the others are just for practice then?
Yeah, yes. And so you would, once we would have went over the chapter, you would see the type of questions that could possibly come out of the
Okay.
chapter on your exam. Again, the exam is 50 in multiple choice and 7
Uh-huh.
essays. So it's for practice because on the exam you do have to write 7 essays.
So we can still submit them, but you're saying you
So
don't necessarily have to. Do we tell you like, oh, let's say I decide to do the 7 questions, right? When I submit them, you
no, you
would
don't
just
submit
take,
them. You don't submit them. You only submit 2, which I will mark and I will give you feedback on to say
oh,
whether or not you're on the right track. Now, if you're not on the right track,
uh-huh,
and then you want to attempt another one if you need some extra help,
right,
then I don't have a problem answering questions. Or if you want to attempt the 7 and you do have some questions, but no,
uh-huh.
you do not submit more than 2
Okay, so I did 2, so I don't have to submit any more
anymore.
questions.
No.
Oh, okay, okay. But if, like you said, when you after, so what, when are you going to, how often, when are you going to return the grades to us? Like,
You should get them by next week Friday. So a week after you would have submitted it, you would
uh-huh.
receive the grade.
And then you'll say basically, whatever mark you get,
Right, all the marks and any comment on what
uh-huh.
was missing, why you gotten some marks taken off. Now,
Oh,
because you are doing open book,
uh-huh.
I expect the expectation is that everybody gets 100% or 90%. I don't really
Okay,
expect anybody to get less because it's open book. Okay.
okay. Mm-hmm.
So, but
Mm-hmm.
on the exam, it's a little bit different, but overall, it's
Uh-huh.
70% to pass.
Okay, so will we be getting, I don't see it here. I might have overlooked it, but there's no midterm exam then.
No, there's no midterm.
No
It's only
midterm,
4 weeks. It's only 4 weeks, and we're on
4
the
weeks.
second week right now.
So
Again,
no
this is just
midterm.
an overview,
Uh-huh.
and this compliance is very comprehensive. There's lots of information, and it's
Mm-hmm.
decision based. And so this
Okay.
introductory course is
Uh-huh.
just for you to decide if you want to go any further, or are you good at making decisions? Are you good at
Okay.
networking? Do you have those interpersonal skills?
Okay.
And very basic, are you able to read? Because believe it or not, a lot of persons do not like
Are
to
you
read.
able to, sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Are you able to?
Read.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds very trivial, but that's
Yes.
the basics. Lots of information, and it
Uh-huh.
requires lots of reading. And so a lot of persons find that they are not able to read
Mm-hmm.
all of this information and keep, pick out,
Retain it.
retain it, correct. And so
Oh,
therefore, this is what this introductory class is about.
okay. So those, you sent us like some attachments, so we have to at least read through them to get some idea of all the FATF laws and all those
Yeah.
things,
So
and the
everything,
central bank guidelines. We have to read through those and at
yeah,
least have some idea of what's in them.
right. So if you want to be in compliance, they are
Mm-hmm.
your go-to regulations that you should be familiar with them. And you don't have to read them
Okay.
in detail. You could go to the table of contents, but they are
Uh-huh.
your referral points for your decision, to make your decisions. Like you don't just pull a decision out of your head. You go and
Okay.
you do some research and you say, my decision is based on Section 3 of the Central Bank Guidelines, which states, or the statutory requirement for monitoring. I
Mm-hmm.
decided that this is, how I made this
Yeah.
decision, because you may need to refer back to it later and you will forget. So
Okay.
you need to be organized and document how you made these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
sometimes the law changes, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
prove that at this particular point, I made this decision, the law was blah, 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 and now the law has been updated to include this. So that
Mm-hmm.
decision would be obsolete. So what I tell persons is to, if you are going to go all the way, start to
Mm-hmm.
make a library, keep a copy of all your documentation, all your research pieces where you found information, so you can easily
Mm-hmm.
refer back to them, because you will need them all the way through.
Okay, so basically these 7 questions are an idea of what will come on the exam, the final exam, basically. These are the
It
kind
is
of
for you
questions
to
that come
practice.
on the, for
I
practice.
can't give you the exact questions, but they will be similar. And
Similar, right, these are
they
some,
will be
yeah,
in essay form.
essay form. Basically, this is some idea of what will be, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
So this
what
will
I
be a
did
good
is I
one.
took one question from the last 10 years of exams. I took
Uh-huh.
one question from each exam so you can have an
Okay.
idea.
All right. Okay. All right. And with the final, how are we going to do this final now?
Okay, so we hope that
Because it's three
um,
hours, so we have to do it physically, like face to face.
right, so face to face, the institute has 8 classrooms, and we
Yes.
expect that there probably will be 2 or 3 persons per classroom, and Miss
Okay.
Dean will organize that. If
Okay.
we're on a complete lockdown, we
Uh-huh.
do have an online facility
Uh-huh.
where you can take the exam online, but
Uh-huh.
you cannot move. You can't, it locks you out of the exam if you make the wrong move. There's no books. Nobody can
Uh-huh.
come in to disturb you. There's no cell phones. You have to
Mhm.
have a laptop with a camera on it, and
Okay.
the exam is completely watched.
Okay.
So we try to stay away from the online because most persons are locked out because somebody laying down and scratch their leg
Yeah.
and the exam locked them out.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So we gotta
you
have
know,
a
it's
face to
very,
face
very
one.
sensitive to ensure.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's easier.
Okay.
Most persons find the face-to-face easier.
Okay. All right.
Okay. But
Okay.
we may
All
have
right.
to move to online completely, but we play it by ear. But
Okay. All right.
you'll know close in the review, you'll know closer to the time.
Okay. Now I still, you have to bear with me. I still don't, I didn't want to interrupt you, but in reading about the tipping off, I don't quite understand. I didn't follow when you said section, oh boy, and my system is frozen. Where you said, for instance, was it penalties where you said under section 9 to 11, right? I'm confused as to where
Mhm.
to find that. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, you have number
Okay,
15 is
right.
penalties. It's just can you go
Okay.
over that one more
So,
time? I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry. Mhm. Just give me another
okay. So
example.
if
Sorry.
example. Okay, so let me, if I am going to go back up to the table of contents, just so
Okay.
person,
Right.
everybody will understand.
And this
Okay,
is what we have. This is what you sent to us, right?
no, I didn't send the proceeds of crime,
Okay.
but I
You were
can
just showing.
if I can. Okay, so
Okay.
in part 3 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, we're looking at the, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
section 9 talks about concealing. Section 10 talks about arrangements concerning proceeds of crime.
Right. Right.
Section 11 talks about acquisitions. Section
Right.
12, 13, and 14, failure to
Uh-huh.
dispose and tipping off. That's
Right.
the section that we're concerned with,
Okay.
right? So
So let's say tipping off. Uh-huh. Okay.
they have bulked the penalties together, right? And they separated it in section 1 and section 2. So when you look at 15 that describes penalties, it
Okay.
says a
Okay. There's
person who
15
commits
there.
an offense,
Uh-huh. Right.
yeah, under sections 9 to 11. But
Right.
our section is 13 and 14. So that is not the penalty. You scroll down to the second part, which is 12 to 14.
So scroll down. Okay. Hello?
I'm here, I'm
Yeah.
listening.
Okay. Okay. Still don't get it. Okay. Okay. That said 9. Okay. Penalty under 15. It says penalties. A person who commits an
Mhm.
offense under section 9 to 11 is liable. Do we look for section 9 to
Yeah, but
11? Uh-huh.
no, we're not concerned about that because our sections are 13 and 14.
Based
So that's
on.
not the penalty. That's not the penalty for section 13 and 14.
So
And don't worry
ours is.
about this because a lot of people get confused. A
Okay.
lot of people get confused. That's not the
Okay.
penalty.
All right.
Okay?
So, uh-huh. Okay.
The penalty is under number 2, a person who commits an offense under sections 12 to 14
It's
because
liable.
we
It
are,
says number 12
yeah,
to 14.
13 and 14.
Okay, go down some more. Okay. A person who commits is 12 to, ours is 12 to 14.
Yeah.
Okay, 12 to 14. And so we'll look for 12 to 14. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
because
So go down to,
if you
okay.
look at if you look at the first penalty is 7 years, or you fine of it not exceeding 500,000. And if you look at 12 to 14 is 12 years, or fine not exceeding 500,000. So it's a bit different.
Okay. Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
And see, this is why and don't worry about feeling confused, because this is why the lawyers make so much money, because it's not in layman's terms. It's not easy to understand. So don't even feel a way about it. Everybody gets confused. And when I normally send persons to do this for homework, they always come back with the 7 years and they get it wrong. So it's good that you are seeking clarity. Because you're not a lawyer.
No, I'm not.
Okay, right. Okay. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Are you going to send this to us?
I can if you want me to, but it's on. And again, I want you to do your research. So go online and Google FTRA and make sure you put in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want you to get comfortable with completing research. And then, in fact, on chapter 3, you could go and Google all of these, the FTRA, the FTRR.
Okay.
But what normally happens is they are these are gazetted, and sometimes the original you may not find everything online, but there is a Mackenzie, you may can help me, laws.com, a bahamianlaws.com, and that's where you should be able to find all the laws. www.bahamianlaws.com, and every Bahamian law should be there. Right, Mackenzie?
Okay. Bahamas laws.
Oh, Bahamas laws.
Bahamas?
Bahamas.gov.bs.
Laws with an S or just law?
Laws with an S.
Okay, so www.bahamaslaws, sorry?
.gov.bs.
Oh, I can hardly hear you. After laws?
.gov, G-O-V.
.gov.
BS.
.bs. Okay, all right. So I'll find everything there.
Yeah, you should find everything there, because sometimes these are gazetted, so you have to go down and pay for print, and get an original print. And I think they charge you like $80 to give you, because it's like 100 and some pages.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Tell me something with when we do these essays, I did mine, like I told you, I did mine more like research where I put pictures, and I realized I should not have done them like that.
Okay, but don't worry, you won't get penalized for it. Again, like I said, a lot of people copy and paste. You get points off for copy and paste, which is plagiarism. If you prove understanding, if you can say this article is related to this topic or what have you, or you can give me a real life scenario
situation
and prove your understanding, that's how you get your points.
Okay, and also
so I hope everybody did.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I was saying I hope I don't only want to see on the placement question, money laundering is integration therein and this and that. I don't only want to see that. I want to see an example of what it is and how did you determine it. So make sure you explain yourself properly so you can get full points.
Right. Now, in terms of like the referencing, you want the referencing to go you wanted to go after each scenario, like if we get something, a certain information from a certain source, you want the source to be added after each?
I sent you the ICA. No, you could put it at, you could do the footnotes. I sent the ICA booklet on referencing, right? And I think I said pages, right. So just read the pages 17 to 19 and it tells you exactly how to do it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you got to validate what you wrote is correct. We don't want, a lot of people, when they talk about cases, like they talk about Shane Gibson being, I said, where do you get this information from? Out my head. I said,
do you want what I'm saying? Do you want us to put it right after? Let's say if we have an incident, let's say, like you mentioned, Shane Gibson, do you want the reference right after that comment? Or could we do it, like you said, at footnotes? Does it matter to you how we do it? Or once we show it?
It does not matter.
Okay, once we show it, we get the information from. Okay, that's what matters. Okay.
But it's good to practice with the ICAC if you're gonna go further, because you get a lot of persons get up to 20 points off for incorrect referencing.
Okay.
So do the footnotes like they say.
Okay. All right.
I mean, just again for practice. I won't take points off for it, but as you move up, you will
Yeah.
see that you get 20, 30 points off for referencing.
Okay.
And so just for you to practice.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anybody? This is our second class. We're halfway there. 2 more classes. Anybody? Toastmasters, Rotary, or Kiwanis is yet? Or over Zoom?
Not as yet.
Not as yet. Nobody. And then somebody asked me about the WhatsApp group. I don't know if you decided amongst yourselves to establish it.
I'm interested, especially when it's coming down to the finals. So we could
so
link up and do group studies and stuff.
Right. So anybody interested in administering it?
Well, I'm not tech savvy, so if someone else can, I'm interested in, joining.
Okay. Anybody who's tech savvy who does not mind setting up the group?
I can set up the group if everyone send their contacts.
Okay. Who's speaking?
Delisa.
Delisa. Okay, Delisa. Thank you for that. Would it be good for them to just put it in the chat right now?
Okay, we can do that too.
Okay, so put your number if you want to be a part of the WhatsApp group, and no pressure. Again, it's just to benefit you to work together, to network. You should be networking with everybody in the class. Again, in previous classes, they went to Toastmasters and Rotary as a group, and they found it beneficial. So, if one person would get a class and invite, and in fact, 2 persons said they were a part of groups and they didn't have a problem inviting us. Who was that? Who said that last week? Was it you, Pratt?
It was me,
Okay. Who was me?
Mackie, Nikita.
Okay, Maki. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Maki, again, once you get once Mackenzie gets the group established, then you can just put the invite in the group and all who want to attend, and then you come back and you give me an overview of your attendance and what you learned and how it was beneficial, and you get your 5 extra points. And again, I say 5 points is the difference between 65 and 70, a pass and a fail, or the difference between the A and the B. Okay, so people like to take advantage of it.
Now, how do I get my thing? I hit chat. Now, how do I put my number? So how do I get you guys to see it? What do I do?
Send. Did you hit send?
Okay, I'm in it. I hit chat. Now, I don't see anything that says send. Let me see.
Okay, so just call it out, and Delisa, if you don't mind,
let me give it to you.
Down,
okay, 242. It's Tanya Bonamy, Tanya Bonamy. It's my number. It's 242-556-6671.
556-6671.
Yes, yes. Well, I feel bad because everyone putting theirs on, but I can't get mine up.
That's okay. I'm not tech savvy at all. I wouldn't even know how to put mine, so don't even worry about it. Thank you, Delisa, for accommodating. Thank you so much.
Because I'm in chat, but someone please help me. I put the number in, but I don't see anything to say send. How do I send?
No worries, I already have your number.
Press enter. Try enter.
Let me see. Let me try it again. Enter. Oh, I did it.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
All
good.
right. Okay.
And we see it, Tanya. Thank you. See, we learned something new. Okay, very good.
I learned something new today.
We're all going to help each other, and we're going to get
yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments or concerns?
Ms. Bullard, let's say that your manager failed to report to the MLRO. Can you go straight to them yourselves and make the report?
Again, it depends on the policy, your policy in your company. Now, like I said, the law says anybody can go directly to the FIU. But if your company's policy is that you report to your manager, then to the MLRO, or directly to the MLRO. It depends on you. So read your company's policy, because again, there should be an AML directive, and in your training, they should tell you how the process works. But I've always been trained, whenever there's an issue or any type of suspicion and you report it to the manager, it's no longer your responsibility.
Yeah.
So if you have evidence, like if you sent it by email, you know what I mean, and just
Right.
leave it and don't worry. It's her now responsibility to pass it on. And if she didn't, it's you know, you have to follow the procedure. Secretly print it and leave it under the MLRO door or something like that if you want to alert them, but be very cautious and careful, because a lot of times senior management has more information than we do, and so you don't want to take any matters in your own hand. If the company's policy is A, you follow their policy. Now, if you believe that they're doing something erroneous or hiding something, you don't want to be a part of that company, I would suggest that you leave and then you approach the FIU and then you report them. But if you report the company and you're still working there, that kind of, you know what I mean? It never works out in the person's favor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also with the World Check, you were saying that certain businesses have this system that they use. Say you work in an institution where they really don't have that system that checks the activity of the client. That means that they should be checking regularly the client using World Check?
Yeah, every night. In fact, every night, your name is supposed to be scanned through World Check. Now, the central bank allows you to do it quarterly if you don't have an automatic system. It depends on the number of clients you have. But like I said, I could go and commit a crime right now, and I could teach you from my prison cell next Friday. How would you know? No, it's possible.
Yeah, that's
how would you know? How would you know? And so therefore, you have to find out at least so you would know, should you be doing some things manually, or what is the workaround to protect yourself? Is there any system, or is there any help to gather all this information, spit it out on a report, or what are we doing to protect ourselves? You at least should know that there is no system and some things have to be done manually. Did anybody watch Dirty Money?
Yes, I did. That was really good.
Okay, give me some feedback. Are you surprised?
I was very shocked that they were actually opening these accounts and sending this information and credit cards to these people who didn't even go into the bank. They just received this through mail. It was,
right. Okay, so again, all these things will educate you, will create awareness, and that's why it's important, and that's why I'm sharing. So please, if you have some time, watch it and gain some awareness, so to ensure that you're not innocently caught up in some of these situations with these companies. A lot of people are only concerned about the bottom line, and so therefore innocent staff members who are not trained properly or who are shocked end up in jail. Okay, they always, the big guys, they have a lot of money and a lot of network, so they can get past it. But us who can't even afford a lawyer, hopefully McKinsey will have mercy on us and represent us in court, because we network with her, and then so watch these things so you know what to look out for in these institutions. Because trust me, I have walked off one or two jobs before just because of their policies, and a CEO where I was reported to the central bank and removed and taken to jail. In fact, I know of another one now that's been fined. So you have to be on your P's and Q's and be careful, and don't just think that, it's not my business. When you realize that some fishy business going on, investigate it and then make a decision, remove yourself, and then go from there. Okay? Okay. So y'all take some time and watch it, please. Good. And make sure that you don't, did that teach you not to sign up for a position that you're not qualified for? When they offer you this big office and this big amount of money and then sit you somewhere just so you
Yes.
can be quiet. Yeah. Yeah, so we have to be careful with all those sorts of things. Okay? Okay, good. So for Saturday, we talk about chapters 5 and chapter 6. Chapter 5 talked about the financial action task force. And on that page it has a process timeline. It's just because the book came out in 2018, and at that time the IMF was at central bank doing a review. And so I'm going to tell you what came out of that review. It was very helpful and beneficial to the Bahamas. Perhaps you can read up on who they are and what they do. And then let's see with chapter 6 talks about customer due diligence. And again, in identification, I will cover a lot of that in terms of what is required. But then it's going to go further into simplified due diligence and enhanced due diligence, and then talk about PEPs more in detail. Okay, so we halfway there. I hope you find it interesting. I hope a lot of you feel that it's not too comprehensive, and you could go on to the second and third levels. Okay, but like I say, as we go along, it's lots of information, but you can retain it and you can put it back on paper, and then you can implement a lot of the things in your institutions. So I'm not worried. This is a good group and everybody seems to be receptive. I just need a little bit more feedback to let me know. I don't want to talk the whole time, so I really want you all to read so we can have a discussion about what's happening in our country, because there's been a lot from the FATF and the European Union in terms of blacklisting, and then what does it mean? Okay?
Mhm.
Okay, very good. And like I said, make sure you don't get those. You have 2 weeks left to get the 5%, so don't take it for granted because it helps. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so very good. I am glad that everybody made it safe through the hurricane. With minimal, I know some of us that didn't have electricity for time frame, but at least we're healthy and we're safe. And please protect yourself against this coronavirus as you move about. Please ensure that you practice the social distancing and remain safe. Okay?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so everybody have a fabulous holiday.
You too.
And we'll start again next week, Saturday. And thank you so much for giving me, my holidays mean so much to me. Thank you so much for giving me a part of it too, so we don't fall too far behind.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, good. So y'all take care and we'll talk next week.
Paulette, one question before you go.
Go ahead.
The name of the book that we're supposed to be reading from?
I can't hear you. I'm getting a lot of static.
Yeah.
Lashan?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
What is the name of the book for this class? Because you said we're supposed to be reading chapter 5 and 6. I never got the name of the book.
Okay, the introduction to AML and compliance systems. You don't have the book?
No.
Okay, so contact the office and they will be able to, you would probably have to go there and pick up a copy.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay? All right, thank you too. Okay, so if that's it, then we will and ensure also when take some time to look at the back of the book. That's where we would have read from about terrorist financing last week. Okay?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then case 1 is some of the multiple choice questions you can practice. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so y'all take care and I'll see y'all next week.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.